The billionaire's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she strode into her penthouse nursery. She froze mid-step. A tall, broad-shouldered man, his shirt sleeves rolled, his rough hands impossibly gentle, was cradling her baby, tipping a warm bottle to the infant's lips. The baby's tiny fingers curled around his thumb, and his low, soothing voice filled the air. Her breath caught, her throat tightened. She had never seen her daughter look that peaceful. Until now. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Who are you? Her voice was sharper than she intended, but her chest was tight with something she couldn't name. The man looked up, startled, but didn't flinch. Ethan, he said quietly, glancing back to the baby as if she were the only thing that mattered. I'm the temp from the agency. They said you needed someone tonight. She stepped closer, every instinct telling her to snatch her baby away, but she couldn't. The child's eyelids fluttered, her lips still gently sucking the bottle, utterly content. I said no one touches her, she snapped, though her tone had lost some of its edge. Ethan's jaw tightened. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. I wasn't going to just stand here. Something in his steady gaze made her pause. He didn't look like the usual polished, eager-to-please staff she hired. His eyes were tired, protective, and behind that, a flicker of hurt, as if he'd been judged too many times before. She wouldn't eat for me earlier, she admitted reluctantly. That's because you were nervous, he said softly, almost like he was talking to the baby, not her. They can feel that. Sometimes they just need to know they're safe. The words hit deeper than she expected. Safe? When was the last time she'd felt that way herself? But this was her child, and this stranger, this single dad from the agency, was in her home, in her nursery, acting like he belonged. What makes you think you know what she needs? She challenged. His expression didn't change, but his voice carried something raw. Because I've been here before. Alone. No one to help. Just a baby who wouldn't stop crying, and a heart that would have shattered if I failed him. Her breath caught. Ethan shifted the baby in his arms, his movements careful, practiced. Look, I'm not here for money or favors or anything else. I just know what it's like when they need you more than anything in the world. For a moment, the billionaire forgot her title, her rules, her sharp edges. All she saw was a man who understood. She didn't answer right away. The sound of her baby's slow, even breathing seemed to fill the entire room. Ethan gently eased the bottle away, checking the temperature of the milk with the back of his hand before setting it on the nearby table. Then, with surprising tenderness, he draped the soft blanket over the baby's tiny form and kept rocking her in his arms. You can put her in the crib now, she said, her voice steadier, but still wary. He shook his head. Not yet. If I lay her down too soon, she'll startle and cry. She needs to know someone's here, holding her through it. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but her chest tightened again at the sincerity in his tone. This wasn't the calculated charm she was used to from people in her orbit. It was honest. You talk like you've done this 1,000 times, she said, crossing her arms. Ethan glanced down at the baby, brushing a finger gently over her cheek. Once was enough to change me forever. That answer was vague, but she could see there was weight behind it, too much to be a casual story. Before she could press, the baby let out a tiny sigh, curling deeper into his chest. Something about the sight twisted inside her. She had hired the best nannies money could buy, yet none of them had ever gotten this reaction from her daughter. What's your story? She asked suddenly, leaning against the nursery doorframe. Nothing worth telling, he said quietly, his eyes still on the baby. Just a dad trying to make ends meet. Lost my son's mom when he was 3 months old. Learned the hard way that you can't clock out when you're the only one they've got. Her throat went dry. She had grown up surrounded by wealth and staff, never knowing what it meant to be without help. She couldn't imagine what it was like for him, doing it alone, without security, without a safety net. Why take this job? You could have worked construction, driven a truck, anything. His lips twitched.
almost into a smile. Because when you've been through nights where your baby won't stop crying and you don't know if you're strong enough to make it till morning, you want to help others avoid that feeling, even if it's just one night. Her voice softened, almost despite herself. That's kind of noble. He shrugged. It's just human. For a moment, their eyes met. The air between them felt heavier, charged. Not romantic, but something else. Something that made her question why this stranger's presence felt more grounding than all the polished people in her life. She didn't realize until much later that this night would be the first crack in the wall she'd built around herself. The baby stirred, a tiny whimper breaking the fragile quiet. Ethan adjusted his hold instinctively, the kind of movement that came from muscle memory, not training. He began to hum, low, warm, almost hypnotic, and the baby settled again. She caught herself staring. It wasn't the humming alone. It was the way his entire focus stayed on the baby, as though the rest of the world didn't exist. "You're unusually good at this," she said, trying to sound casual. "Unusually?" His brow arched slightly. She shrugged. "Most men I've met panic when they see a baby bottle." "I didn't have the luxury to panic," he said simply. Then his eyes flicked up at her, sharp but not unkind. "And maybe you shouldn't underestimate people because of what you expect them to be." Her lips parted slightly, caught off guard by the way his words cut through the air. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the dresser. She stepped over, glancing at the screen. 3 missed calls from the same number. The company board chair, again. She turned the phone face down without answering. "You're ignoring someone important," he noted, still rocking her baby. "You don't know anything about it," she replied quickly, more defensive than she meant to be. "I know when someone's trying to pretend a problem doesn't exist," he said, voice low but sure. Her chest tightened. No one talked to her like that. Not employees, not family. Yet somehow, she didn't feel offended, just seen. "You think you've got me figured out?" she asked, taking a slow step toward him. "I think you're someone who's had to be tough for too long," he said. "And maybe you forgot what it's like when someone's willing to carry the weight with you." Something hot and unwelcome pricked at the corners of her eyes. She turned away before he could see. "I don't need anyone to carry my weight." "That's the thing," Ethan said, his voice gentler now. "You don't need it. But sometimes it's okay to want it." The baby yawned, her tiny mouth stretching wide, and for a second, all the tension in the room melted. She exhaled slowly, leaning against the wall. "When was the last time you slept?" "Last night," he said, with a faint grin. "For 4 hours." 4? She almost laughed. He nodded toward the sleeping baby. Parents take what they can get. For the first time in months, she felt her guard lower, just slightly. And for reasons she didn't yet understand, the presence of this stranger in her home felt less like an intrusion and more like relief. What she didn't know was that before the night ended, this man's presence would shatter more than her walls. It would upend her entire world. A sharp knock at the penthouse door cut through the soft quiet of the nursery. Her head snapped toward the sound, brows furrowing. No one ever came here unannounced. Ethan's gaze shifted instantly, his body going still in that way people do when they're ready to protect. "You expecting someone?" "No," she said flatly, moving toward the hallway. "Stay here." But when she reached the door, Ethan was already there, the baby monitor in one hand, his other hand resting lightly against the doorframe, not blocking her, but close enough to react fast if needed. She hesitated, then opened the door a crack. 2 men stood there, dressed in suits that looked expensive but worn at the edges. One spoke first. "We need to talk to you. It's about your late husband's debts." Her stomach sank. "You have no right to be here." "Ma'am," the second man said smoothly, "either you step outside or we discuss it right here." His eyes flicked past her shoulder toward the nursery hallway. Ethan's posture changed in an instant, calm but dangerous. "You've got about 3 seconds to take a step back before this conversation's over." The first man scoffed. "And who exactly are you?" Someone who knows how to handle people who don't respect boundaries, Ethan said, his voice low enough that it didn't wake the baby, but sharp enough to slice through the tension. She caught the way the two men's bravado faltered, just slightly, but they still lingered. "This isn't over," one muttered, before they finally turned and walked away down the hallway. She shut the door quickly, locking it, her heart pounding. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Ethan cut in. "You were standing here with your guard down and they were looking past you. That's not about debts, that's about leverage." Her hands trembled slightly. They'd been circling for weeks, she admitted, hating how vulnerable her voice sounded. "I thought if I ignored them, they'd go away." "People like that don't go away," Ethan said, meeting her eyes. "They just wait until they see you alone." She swallowed hard, the reality of it settling over her like ice. "You've dealt with people like that before?" He didn't answer right away. "Let's just say I've learned what matters most is keeping the ones who can't fight for themselves safe." Her gaze drifted toward the baby monitor in his hand. And for the first time that night, she realized he wasn't just good with her daughter. He was willing to stand in front of danger without hesitation. And that, she thought, was something no amount of money could buy. The apartment felt quieter now, but not in a peaceful way, more like the heavy silence after a storm. She sat on the edge of the couch, her elbows resting on her knees, watching Ethan as he moved to set the baby gently in her crib. He lingered there a moment, one hand lightly resting on the railing, before he came back into the living room. "You didn't have to stay after what happened," she said, her voice low. "Yeah," he replied, shrugging off his jacket. "But I wasn't about to walk out knowing someone might come back." She studied him, this man who had stepped into her home a stranger and, in less than a night, acted with more loyalty than some people she'd known for years. "You talk like someone who's done this before, protecting people." His eyes flickered, the shadow of an old memory passing over them. "I used to wear a badge before my son was born. Thought I could save the whole world. Turns out I just needed to save one little life, and that was enough." Her breath caught. "Your son?" "8 now," Ethan said, a faint smile touching his lips. "Bright, stubborn, way too smart for me. He was born early. I was there every second, feeding him with one of those same bottles, praying he'd make it through the night." Something inside her shifted. She realized then that this wasn't just a man who could care for a child. This was a man who had lived the fear, the exhaustion, the endless love that came with it. She leaned back, her voice softer than it had been all night. "You know, most people I deal with only care about what I can do for them. You're the first person in a long time who's done something for me without asking what's in it for them." Ethan met her gaze steadily. "Maybe that's because I'm not here for you." He glanced toward the nursery door. "I'm here for her." Her throat tightened, and before she could stop herself, she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once, as if that was all he needed, and reached for his jacket. "I should go. Let you rest." But as he reached the door, she found herself standing. "Ethan, wait." He turned, and for a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then she said, "I don't know what's going to happen with those men, but if you're willing, I'd like you to stay. Not just tonight." He searched her face, measuring the weight of her words, then gave a single, quiet nod. "All right." And as the door stayed shut and the city lights flickered beyond the glass, she knew this wasn't just the start of hiring a man to watch her child. It was the start of something neither of them could yet name, something that might just change both of their lives forever.